The rain had been falling over the city since morning, covering the streets of Chicago in silver reflections and soft shadows. Cars moved slowly through the wet roads, and people hurried under umbrellas without noticing each other. Everyone seemed busy. Everyone seemed lost inside their own world. At the corner of Maple Street stood a small bookstore called Golden Pages. It was old, quiet, and almost forgotten. Most people passed by without even looking at it anymore. But inside that little bookstore worked a young man named Ethan Parker. Ethan was 28 years old, tall, calm, and thoughtful. He had dark brown hair, tired eyes, and a quiet smile that appeared only when someone truly needed kindness. He loved books more than anything because books had once saved him from loneliness. Years ago, Ethan had lost both of his parents in a terrible car accident. Since then, he had lived alone. He never spoke much about his pain. Instead, he buried himself inside stories, helping customers find books that healed broken hearts the same way stories had healed his. Every evening after work, Ethan would sit near the bookstore window with a cup of coffee, watching the rain or sunset while reading old novels. Life was peaceful but empty, until the day Olivia entered the bookstore. The bell above the door rang softly. Ethan looked up from his desk. A young woman stepped inside, shaking raindrops from her coat. She had long black hair, gentle green eyes, and a face that carried both beauty and sadness together. She looked around quietly, almost like someone searching for a memory instead of a book. "Can I help you?" Ethan asked politely. Olivia smiled faintly. "I'm looking for a book about starting over." Ethan looked at her for a moment. "Fiction or reality?" he asked softly. "For now, fiction." That was the first time Ethan saw her smile properly. He walked through the shelves and handed her an old novel called The Light Beyond Winter. "My mother loved this book," he said. Olivia carefully touched the cover. "Then it must be special." She bought the book and left. But the next day she returned. And the day after that, soon Olivia became part of Ethan's quiet world. Sometimes she would sit by the bookstore window reading while Ethan organized shelves nearby. Other times they would talk about stories, life, dreams, and regrets. Olivia Harper was different from anyone Ethan had ever met. She listened carefully when he spoke. She noticed small things. She remembered details nobody else remembered. One evening, while thunder echoed outside, Olivia asked, "Do you ever feel like people carry invisible storms inside them?" Ethan looked at her silently. "Every day," he answered. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Olivia whispered, "I think I've been drowning in one for a long time." Ethan wanted to ask what had hurt her so deeply, but something in her eyes told him she wasn't ready, so he simply sat beside her. And sometimes silent company becomes the strongest kind of comfort. Weeks passed. Autumn slowly painted the city gold and orange. Ethan and Olivia grew closer with every passing day. They explored quiet cafes, walked beside the river at night, and shared stories under glowing streetlights. For the first time in years, Ethan felt alive again. One cold evening, Olivia stood outside the bookstore looking at the sky. "My father used to say," she began softly, "that lonely people notice the moon more than others." Ethan smiled. "Maybe because the moon understands distance." Olivia laughed gently. Her laugh was soft, warm, and healing. Ethan realized then that he was falling in love with her. Deeply, slowly, completely, but love also carries fear, the fear of losing. The fear of change, the fear that happiness might disappear the moment you touch it. And Olivia was hiding something. Ethan could feel it. Some days she looked distant. Some nights she disappeared without explanation. Occasionally he noticed medicine bottles inside her bag, but he never asked questions, until one evening. Olivia fainted inside the bookstore. Ethan rushed toward her in panic. "Olivia!" Her skin was cold, her breathing weak. At the hospital, Ethan waited for hours under harsh white lights while rain crashed against the windows outside. Finally, a doctor approached him. "Are you family?" Ethan hesitated. "No, but I care about her," the doctor sighed quietly. "She has a heart condition, severe cardiomyopathy." Ethan felt the world stop moving. "She's been receiving treatment for almost 2 years." "Why didn't she tell me?" Ethan whispered. The doctor looked at him sadly. "Some people become tired of explaining their pain." That night changed everything. When Olivia woke up, Ethan sat beside her hospital bed silently. "You should hate me," she whispered weakly. Ethan looked at her with tears in his eyes. "I could never hate you." Olivia turned away. "I didn't want you to see me like this." "Then how did you want me to see you?" She stayed quiet. Ethan leaned closer. "You walked into my life when I had forgotten how to feel anything," he said softly. "You made this world brighter again." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "But I'm sick, Ethan. You're alive." I might not have much time. Ethan held her hand carefully. Then I'll make every moment matter. Olivia cried silently, not because she was afraid anymore, but because someone had finally chosen to stay. After leaving the hospital, their relationship changed. It became deeper, realer, more fragile and more beautiful at the same time. Ethan began taking Olivia to places she had always dreamed of seeing. They watched sunrise near Lake Michigan wrapped in blankets and hot coffee. They danced under city lights while street musicians played violin music nearby. They spent nights reading books together inside the bookstore after closing time. And slowly, Olivia began healing emotionally even if her body remained weak. One snowy night she asked Ethan, "Why are you still here?" Ethan smiled gently. "Because love isn't about staying only when things are easy." Olivia looked down. "My ex-fiancé left when he found out about my illness." Ethan felt anger rise inside him. "How could anyone leave you?" Olivia shrugged sadly. "People fear broken things." Ethan lifted her chin carefully. "You're not broken." Those words stayed in Olivia's heart forever. Winter arrived fully. Snow covered rooftops and silent streets. The bookstore glowed warmly every evening like a small lighthouse in the middle of a cold world. Customers often noticed how Ethan looked at Olivia when she entered the room, like someone grateful for a miracle. One afternoon, Olivia discovered an old letter inside a book while cleaning shelves. "What's this?" Ethan froze slightly. "It's something I wrote years ago." She unfolded it carefully. The letter was addressed to his late mother. Inside it, Ethan had written about loneliness, fear, and the hope that one day someone would enter his life and make him feel understood again. Olivia's eyes became emotional. "You never stopped believing in love," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "No, I just stopped expecting it." Olivia hugged him tightly. For a long moment the world outside disappeared, only their heartbeat remained. But life rarely allows happiness to remain untouched forever. A few weeks later, Olivia's condition worsened. She became weaker, breathing became difficult, hospital visits became frequent. One night while snowstorms covered the city, Olivia looked at Ethan from her hospital bed. "If something happens to me, don't," Ethan interrupted immediately. "Please listen." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'm scared." Ethan held her hand against his chest. "So am I," Olivia smiled sadly. "But you're brave." "No," Ethan whispered. "I'm just in love with you." The machines beside her bed beeped softly in the darkness. Olivia closed her eyes for a moment. "Promise me something. Anything. If I survive this, we travel somewhere far away, somewhere quiet." Ethan nodded instantly. "I promise." The surgery was scheduled 3 days later. Those 3 days felt endless. Ethan barely slept. He stayed beside Olivia constantly, reading to her from her favorite books and telling her stories about the future they would build together. The morning of the surgery arrived cold and silent. Before doctors took her away, Olivia whispered weakly, "I love you." Ethan kissed her forehead. "I'll be here when you wake up." Then the doors closed. Hours passed. Ethan sat alone in the waiting room, staring at the floor while fear slowly consumed him. For the first time since losing his parents, he prayed, not for himself, for her. Finally, after nearly 7 hours, the surgeon appeared. Ethan stood immediately. The doctor smiled softly. "She made it." Ethan broke down in tears, pure relief, pure gratitude. When Olivia woke up later that evening, Ethan was beside her holding flowers and crying like a child. "You're alive," he whispered repeatedly. Olivia smiled weakly. "So are you." Recovery took months, but little by little Olivia regained strength. Spring returned to Chicago. Flowers bloomed again. The city looked alive, and so did they. One evening, Ethan closed the bookstore early and took Olivia to the rooftop of their building. Lights from the city shimmered around them like stars fallen onto Earth. Olivia looked confused. "What's happening?" Ethan smiled nervously. Then he knelt down slowly. "Before you," he said, voice trembling, "I was surviving life, but you taught me how to live it." Olivia covered her mouth emotionally. "You showed me that love isn't about perfection, it's about staying. Understanding, fighting for someone even when the world becomes difficult." Tears rolled down her cheeks. Ethan opened a small ring box. "Olivia Harper, will you marry me?" She started crying before she could even answer. "Yes." The city lights blurred behind her tears as Ethan placed the ring on her finger. Months later, the bookstore hosted their small wedding. Friends, customers, and neighbors filled the room with warmth and laughter. Books surrounded them from every side. It felt perfect. During the ceremony, Olivia looked at Ethan and whispered, "You saved me." Ethan smiled gently. "No, we saved each other." Years later, people still visited Golden Pages bookstore not only for books, but for the story of Ethan and Olivia. The story of two lonely souls who found healing inside each other. The story that reminded everyone of something important. Sometimes life breaks people. Sometimes pain changes them forever. But love, real love, has the power to rebuild hearts that once believed they could never feel whole again.